Um, Thank you again for coming to the session. This is Organization Focus Session B, and one of our focuses this afternoon is going to be to talk about the characteristics that lead to institutional research success. My name is Charlena Simmons, and I am the director of the Northeast Ellis AMP. I am also the Director of Student Success and Diversity at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I work in the College of Natural Sciences. And my co-host for today.
Hi, I'm Kent Smith. I'm the Associate Dean for the Office for the Advancement of American Indians in Medicine and Science at OSU CHS and Professor of Anatomy. Welcome to Session B. Our presenters will have about 10 minutes each to discuss three themes, essentially characteristics that lead to the international research success. Organizations and agencies play a powerful role in guiding international programs, disseminating results, communicating best practices, and evaluating impact. We would like for the panel to address the three goals of this particular session, which include define characteristics that facilitate young students' research success in an international setting, identify ways in which local members, faculty, and the sending country can engage in research their students do abroad for the benefit of the student as well as their benefit. And finally, discuss best practices to engage indigenous and socially disadvantaged peoples across cultures to inspire enhanced participation in authentic international STEM research. We'll let the panel introduce themselves, and we'll start with Tony, adjacent me.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, my name is Tony Claudino. I work at the Institute of International Education. I specifically run the Fulbright student program, the outreach component of it. So my job is to get students, I basically kick Americans out of the country. I want them to get an experience going abroad. It makes everybody smile. It's great. I'm going to pull up my slides. I'm going to focus, since we have 10 minutes, I am going to be a little bit like a New Yorker, if you don't mind, and go quick through this thing. It'll keep you guys awake as well and on your toes. Three things I'm going to focus on in terms of the characteristics that lead to international research success. First, I'm going to look at open door statistics. That's something that the Institute of International Education publishes. These are statistics related to study abroad. Secondly, we're going to look at some Fulbright impact data that we have. We've been surveying some Fulbrighters that have returned from their experience, and we've gathered some of those impacts. And I'll talk about the characteristics that make a successful Fulbrighter, especially in the research field. And the third thing is I've asked one of our alumni ambassadors, she is currently a professor at Drexel in biomedical engineering, what she thinks are the key points in terms of characteristics for successful undergrad international research. So those are my three ambitious tasks that I will try to do in 8.5 seconds. So here we go. As you can see, globalization is changing the way we work. Our colleague from the Erasmus mentioned that 65% of companies are looking for someone with an international experience. At IIE, we just launched a Generation Study Abroad campaign where we're trying to get institutions and organizations to double the number of study abroad students that go abroad. So if you haven't signed up for Generation Study Abroad, we do have some things on the little table outside. So that's a little plug for Generation Study Abroad. Overall, in 13-14, we had about 300,000 students study abroad, and that was a 5% increase from the previous years. I pulled out some slides from Open Doors that are specifically for this field, so you can see the STEM focused. You can see the physical and life sciences made up about 8% of study abroad opportunities, and that's slightly going down, as you can see from previous years. And the field that has been going up has actually been engineering. Engineering's gone up 5%. Over since 2000. The other interesting slide that we wanted to share from you from IIE was internships, volunteering, and work abroad. And you can see that is an area where students are very interested in doing. They're besides just going and getting an academic experience at a university overseas, they also want to get that internship component or working in a lab or in the field. So that's another trend that we're seeing in Open Doors. And then, I'm going backwards, and that's going to kill me on my time. Students in the STEM fields participating in internships. So we also surveyed 80 higher education institutions and internship providers, and 31% 70% reported STEM fields among the top 3 majors of students participating in internships overseas. So the students that we see really want a practical in the lab or in the field experience. Study abroad is one of the best ways to understand the way we work. There are 3 issues to success that we see. One is academic success. So we see people that have been abroad, and some of my colleagues have said this in other presentations as well. Retention, they graduate higher as well, so graduation rates increase, and employability also increases. Let me see, yes. So the characteristics now I'll get into quickly about Fulbright. The characteristics we see on the Fulbright student program that make a successful candidate is flexibility and patience. Our 2 important characteristics, our colleague from the University of Texas yesterday, I believe Frank, mentioned the example where he went up to a lab, to a field site, and then the sponsor wasn't there, and adaptability is also important. Cross-cultural understanding is another characteristic where we feel it's important in Fulbrighters, as well as the quality of the institution and lab. The affiliation is really important in the networking. So are they carrying out the best possible? If they're going on a Fulbright to Brazil, for example, are they at the best research facility to carry out that research? So that's one of the things we are looking at within Fulbright. And then a strong rationale of why they have to go abroad and carry out this research. Especially in the STEM field, that's very important. The 6th characteristic we see within Fulbright is feasibility is important. When we're reading the applications, we want to make sure they have the background to carry out that project, and they have the skills to carry out that project. So those are the things we're looking at within Fulbright in terms of the characteristics. We do impact surveys, and so here's one that we just did. Yearly, we're doing impact surveys. We're not going 5 years out or 10 years out right now. We're only 1 year out, or 2 years out at least. You can see that as a result of my Fulbright, 70%, my ability to function in a multicultural environment increased. 70% agreed that, or more like 94 if you add strongly agree and agree. My ability to adapt to new situations increased as well. 69% felt strongly agreed with that. I have a greater sense of independence and self-confidence. This is another thing that some of the other presenters have mentioned earlier, yesterday and today. And then I improved my foreign language skills 61%. I do not have that statistic that Erasmus person had about partners that they find on a Fulbright. So I'll try to get that in the future. The other interesting thing, as a result of my Fulbright, I obtained a higher level position or status when they returned. That was 51% overall, and I organized and initiated new activities and projects. So they become very productive when they come back. And they assume new leadership roles and more responsible positions. And lastly, we have a little bit of entrepreneurs in the Fulbright community. About 9% established new organizations, whether it's for-profit or private. So these are 2 of the big picture graphs related to the impact of Fulbright. Then we have alumni ambassadors. Every year we basically appoint. They have to apply through this rigorous process that we have. But we had about 400 students apply for about 20 spots. And what we do is we take alumni ambassadors because we're not getting any younger up here. And so the alumni ambassadors can really connect with the students, with the applicants. Dr. Cara Spiller has presented with us at several other conferences as well. She was a biomedical engineering student on a Fulbright to Portugal. She studied at the University of Minho. And so I asked a question for her, especially in the STEM. What is, these are the things that we mentioned in terms of Fulbright: flexibility, patience, cross-cultural understanding. How does she see it from the lab? Because she's running a lab at Drexel. And she came up with 3 really key things. She said enhanced productivity. She felt that students that were about to go abroad had enhanced productivity, and she stressed that it's before, during, and after. She said before they leave for their study abroad experience, they really have to hurry up and get a lot of their lab tests done before they catch the plane. So you have a drop-dead deadline is what she was saying. Then there's productivity while they're on their Fulbright, because if you're in a lab, like our colleagues earlier at Kern in Geneva, you really want to perform and show them that you're a smart, energetic student. And then the third type of productivity is when they come home, they come back with new ideas, and in terms of wanting to change things. So she's a big proponent of enhanced productivity. The second thing is problem solvers, she felt. Most of the people that came back from an exchange, doesn't have to be Fulbright in her case, from her lab, were problem solvers. They were able to adapt to the situation they had and come back with new solutions. They weren't waiting for a professor or for the lab head to come up with a decision. The third thing she felt was important in her lab is for students to take ownership of the study abroad experience or the exchange experience. As professors, you could initiate those exchanges. Like I could talk to my Brazilian colleague, put them in touch with one of my panelists here, and let them have the conversation. But that's really important that he takes the reign and actually sets up what exactly is he going to be doing in São Paulo, at what lab, what he's doing. So as a professor, I think initiating the correspondence, the introductions is important, but making sure that the students have ownership is really important. And that's where the networking component comes in. Networking is very much a part of Fulbright as well, in terms of finding the best possible place to carry out your research, as I mentioned. And then our discussion was great. Then she said, how do we make sure the science is still tracked? You know, they're off to Geneva doing some type of project or off to Brazil. How do we make sure the science is tracked? And what she does is she has regular Skype calls with her students. So on a regular interval, she'll be talking to her lab assistant, no matter where they are, to figure out how they're doing on the study abroad experience. And then also gearing them up so when they come back into the lab, they're up to speed where the results have gone. So that was very interesting that she stays in touch with them while they're abroad. And then she's a big fan of making sure they publish results. So making sure when they come back, they have enough, first of all, with the Skype calls, she's ensuring they have enough material, research done, that they can publish results. So those are the two criteria she has. The 3 and 5, that doesn't refer yesterday to 3 husbands and 5 children, right? If you know the conversation we had with the oral history, right? So the 3 refers to, she also raised the question for graduate students, what's the best time to go abroad, in her opinion? And she said it's the 3rd year of a PhD program. She felt it was important. And then she also felt the optimum number of months, if she had to give a minimum, was 5 months. She said anything shorter than that, in her opinion, is too short. Anything longer, they're not as connected to the lab. These are her views, not necessarily mine, because within the Institute of International Education, we probably want you to go longer than 5 months, but we're happy that you're going abroad as well. And I think the other thing I'll just add quickly, if I can, in terms of let's see if I can do it. Yes. I'm just going to show you a website because our Brazilian friend did as well. So that was the characteristics. In terms of identifying a local mentor, my Brazilian colleague mentioned a website in terms of who's publishing what and when, which I think is great. On the Fulbright side, this is the Scholar website. So this is faculty. 800 faculty go abroad and 800 faculty come here. And you could see View Scholar Directory. And then I will not try the bio. I will tell you that. No, biomedical engineering. Why not? So then you could see all of the professors, whether they're visiting or US in the same field, biomedical engineering, and then you can also see the project titles. So for an applicant or someone looking for a lab overseas, this is a great resource on the Scholar side. But I am out of time. But that's it for now. I want to keep the presentation going and we could talk about other things as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, a language lesson. I'm a member of the Siksika Nation, and I wanted to say hello in my language. So, Oki is how we say hello. Siksika is how you say Blackfoot in our language. And then my name, which I was given when I was very young, is Agapo Suis, which means many weasel tails. And so I'm just going to talk to you. I don't have a lot of mentoring experience. Most of my mentoring happened as a professional working for the project that I'm going to talk about. So I'll kind of focus on that and more focus on the international part of it because it's a big project that I work on. It's an NSF funded project, but it's a huge collaboration. So we work with a lot of people around the world. Have any of you heard of LIGO? Yeah, we were in the news like about a month ago, so we made big news because of our detection of gravitational waves for the first time. So back in September, we made that detection, and then in February, we announced it. So I was just going to go through this really quick. Oh, yeah, while I'm here, I just want to describe what our machine is really quick. Very simply, because it's kind of related to some of the systems that some other the projects that we have are international. So some of the systems that are in our detector are here. So we have our laser source that's here, and then we have mirrors that are 4 kilometers away in these buildings there. And those 2 systems in particular were designed by groups that are in other countries. So the laser that we have was designed by groups in Germany. And then this guy right here is one of those mirrors that's 4 kilometers away. And that was designed, the whole suspension for this mirror was designed in the UK, mainly in Glasgow. And so one of the things that about our project is that we're lucky in that we have a lot of interaction with groups all over the world. And so I got to work with some of the people who did some of the suspension work, not so much with the laser, but this is some of the examples of the connections that we have with the international community for our project. And then the other thing is that right now, as far as gravitational wave astronomy, it's pretty small. I mean, eventually we'll have a big array of detectors throughout the world, but right now we only have 2. So we have LIGO, which is 2 detectors. We have one in Washington State, that's where I live, and then we have another detector in Louisiana. And so a little note about the detection that we had was that the detection happened a billion light years away from here. And when it passed through the Earth, it hit Louisiana first, and then 7 milliseconds later, Hanford, our observatory, detected the event. So we could say that the Louisiana always lets us know that they're the ones who made the detection first. And so tomorrow there's going to be another speaker from LIGO, and his name's William Parker, and he was the actual operator who was sitting in the chair early that night in September when the event occurred. And so you can get autographs from him if you want. And then so right now we only have 2 detectors, and then we're waiting for these other ones to come online soon. So Italy has one called Virgo that's hopefully going to join us in the fall when we go back online. And then Japan is building one inside of a mine in a mountain in Japan. And so those are the 2 big ones that are coming up soon that will have sensitivities that'll be similar to what our detectors are. GEO is a smaller detector, and they're already running, but their sensitivity isn't quite as great as ours, but they're already up and running. So if there's a big enough event, they might also catch one as well. Okay. And I get the other, as far as mentoring, I guess our internships are one of the big things that we have. So whenever I go to conferences, I have tons of brochures, and I do it as best I can just to recruit undergrads to do work and research with LIGO. And so Caltech places these students either in Pasadena and Caltech or at one of the observatories where they could do work at one of the sites. And there's some students who are from other countries as well. So that's one aspect that we have. And then the University of Florida also has another program that they run separate to Caltech, where they place the students to do research in projects throughout the world. So there's a lot of other universities that are doing research related to LIGO, and that's where an international aspect of studies that we have for our work. And I feel I kind of have to mention what the big news was for us. And so that's kind of the mindset change that we've had for about 18 years. So we kind of referred ourselves in LIGO years. How long have we been working at LIGO? So I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science degree way back in 1997. And then I got hired to work at Caltech the following year. So I've been with LIGO for 18 years. And for all of that time, up until the last few months, we just talked about what our project was, the types of work that we do, and we didn't really have results up until February. So this is kind of a new mindset that we have. So now we actually have results, and that's what we're going to continue to be doing for the next, well, for the future for us. And so this is an example of this is the actual data that we have from our detection that we had in September. And so I just want to go through some of this here. So the left side is the data, or that's the data that we had from the Washington site, and then on the right side is the data that we had from Louisiana. And the plot on the upper left is showing both traces, both Washington and Louisiana on the same plot. And for that one, I also have to reveal another prop that I have, which is this. So I do a lot of outreach work, and so this is a good thing that I have now. So this is the actual, this is that same image there that I got on a tattoo when I was visiting Puerto Rico just a couple weeks ago. And so that's our new, this is our new focus. So we're hoping to be just an assembly line of making detections. And so September was our first one, but we're still going through data from this first observation run that we had. And so there could be some more in that run, but in the future, as we improve the sensitivity for our machine, we hope to get tons and tons of more events. There's my tattoo. I'm on Twitter, and actually the tattoo is more popular than me, so people retweet that image a lot. So on Twitter, you could look Corey Gray up or Quantum of Salsa online. I'm a salsa dancer too. This is me hiking just a couple weeks ago. And then I gave a talk to some Native students where I went to school. So it's like I can't go on vacations anymore. So I wanted to go just to see friends back at HSU. That's Humboldt State University in Northern California. I wanted to go there and just see friends, and there was a powwow there, and just to go there. But the physics department heard I was in town, so they ended up hiring me for the day to give a talk. And so I gave a talk to the physics department and the public there. And so this is at a bowling event that we did afterwards, and there's my tattoo. One thing that was very nice to be involved with our whole event was to see how we unveiled it. So there was a lot of planning the weeks before February 11th when we made the announcement. And so there was, how are we going to tackle social media? What's the press conference going to look like? What kind of visuals will we have for the event? And then another aspect for it was translations. And so we have a huge international community that works with LIGO. And yeah, so when they mentioned that, I mean, one of the first things I thought is that it would be great if we can make a translation of the press release into a native language. And so that's what, I'm not a speaker, I just told you a few words that I know, but my mom is a fluent speaker. And is it Dodie? Yeah, you were talking about boarding schools. So my mom was one of that generation where she was taken away from her parents, and she had to go to boarding school. And so that's kind of why we didn't get to learn our language, because she was not encouraged. She was forced to not speak her language. And so that's an unfortunate thing for the later generations, because we didn't get to learn something like that. So I took that opportunity to have my mom see the press release before it was released, which was, I wasn't supposed to do that. I mean, we only had a limited amount of people who could look at the press releases and know about it before it was announced. So my mom got to read that a few days before it happened, and then she made a translation for it. And so the translation was about a page long, and she, I think about 1 or 2 days, she was able to do that. So kind of intermixed there is English and then Blackfoot or Siksika. And just this here, I spread it around a little bit. So it was kind of cool to spread it to my tribe. And then also Indian Country Today, which is a national periodical I sent them this file to. And it was just nice or neat to hear all the encouragement or the enthusiasm about science, or a native being in the sciences, or just to be a part of that and help to spread that idea that natives could be in the sciences. I mean, I'm just a normal person, and it was good to get that out there to the community. And then that's an article that was on Indian Country Today. And then this is my mom. Her mom, my family, or on my mom's side, is the Yellowflies and Eagle Ribs. And then this is my mom, Sharon Yellowfly. And this is us at In-N-Out before I was going to a conference. And that's all I have. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jenny Delgado. I'm Peruvian. I live in Maryland now, and I represented the Umbrella Initiative Foundation. We are a nonprofit organization who work from Maryland and build bridges to go to the south in Peru and Bolivia. I'm now here, thank you to Randy, because he checked our website the day that I decided coming and be part of this conference, and he said, I really want to do, if you can share what you do with kids in Maryland, here in the States, and also in Peru. Then what's the next? It's here. And after 6 years living in the States, I recognize myself as a Latina. But it's really hard to say that when you just arrive. And the beginning is I'm Peruvian. For a full of the year, I say I'm Peruvian, Latinas, what that mean be a Latina when you live in the States. And it's really interesting to start thinking what your background is. A lot of you coming from science, years and years be working in the lab and university as a professors, but how you recognize yourself without title? Are you part of a tribe? Are you a Latino? Are you European descendants or African descendants? And this is what is important to, when working with minorities, talking as a Latina, what we can see in all these flags. We are, in the United States, 70%, mean 55 million people recognize themselves as a Latino citizens living in the country. And no, it's not only have a citizenship. What that means, have 2 languages. I want to know what, if you recognize yourself as a bilingual, raise your hands. Are you bilingual? You really, you're fluent in a language, in 2 languages, or 3 sometimes. We can see if you recognize yourself as a bilingual, you have the same rights, you have the same opportunities, or also more than that. And also, when you was a kid, how do you feel when you was saying your mom, or talking with your mom in Spanish? What is the feel talking in 2 languages, French or other language, who is really important in the country? We understand in the foundation that we need to start looking and changing what happened with the Latino community in the country. And we started a Bilingual Voices for Education program, who 2 years ago started working with around 35 kids in the area of Maryland to see what happened with these kids and how we can encourage them to be really bilingual and feel proud where they're coming from. They're born here. They are citizens. But their parents, they're maybe from Mexico, from Peru, from Argentina, from Colombia, and we wanted to do something with the kids. And I want to know if, when you was a kid, who was your reference to be want to be a science? When started you say, I want to be a science? When started this idea in all you who is starting to study science? Started when you was a kid, when you was 8 or 10 years old, and say, I want to go to college, I want to change and do some work in science. We asked to these kids last year, and they say, I want to be a scientist. After that decision, when they raise their hands in our program, we decide to make a big group, and thank you to Sagnes, who is here. We have Dr. Gonzalez with us, who's the founder of Sagnes. We meet different group of postdoc students who they try to share their experience as a Latino science in NIH. And all these kids, we went to NIH visit, and we found it really important to meet what will be a reference. All of us are talking how we make our students go abroad and make their science big and back to the country and make something that will change their life, or the university, or what happened in the community. We want to make something different. But it started with, you are as a kid, met someone who can share with you what happened in their life before. What happened in their process, what happened in their life. And we have in the picture 12 kids from 8 years old to 12 visiting NIH, sit down in a table with real science and sharing their experience, what happened with them. And as a bilingual, it's really important to understand is your brain is working really the double, like you're thinking in one language and another. It's really interesting how the kids start asking in Spanish or asking in English, and we encourage the kids have this idea, like you use both languages the same, and how you can develop your career or your studies in both sides. We have some of the students who share their experience, how they started to interested in science, what happened in their life. They meet before someone like impressed them to wanted to be a science, go to university. And we find like this is the beginning of the future generations in science in the Latino community. We can see, we start now as a kid, we can see how they can decide, go for a career. Science or social science, what is really important to identify is they can go and see the future of their family, change the life of their families going to universities. When yesterday we seen like how many of your students, they are minorities. They have low-income students. They coming from low-income families. Sometimes coming from families that their parents don't have papers. Oh, these kids don't have all the papers to go abroad. This is something like we need to start thinking. Maybe one of the great students not have the passport or the permission to go to other country because maybe they're born here, or maybe they crossed the border with the family when they just was a year old, and there's a lot of frustration. What we wanted to do with the community is to encourage the community to feel part of what happened in the country. We see that the American dream for a lot of Latino family is not real. We see that it's a lot of challenges they complete only high school. When you have a Latino student in your campus, you need to see how maybe it's the first generation, or maybe it's someone who really was working really full-time with their parents to save the money, or they have a lot of issues in their family, and they're really giving us an idea how is we can help them. We can help these kids. When I see the face of all these kids, we see the future. And we are almost 20% of the population. We're talking like in 30 years, we will be the 40% of the population in the country, the Latinos. And we need to start working now because their kids, 8 years old, 10 years old, in 10 years, they will be ready to go to university and do something. One of the programs in the U.S. is working with the Latino communities. But what happened in Latin America? What happened in Peru and Bolivia? What happened in the South? We started a program to encourage students to have an internship and have a volunteer opportunities. In Peru, only 10% of the student or the young people have the opportunity to go to universities. And we're working in partnership with university. Well, we started a partnership with University of San Diego, and the idea is what they can share about the experience here as a student with kids in Peru. And last year we have a group coming to. It's a group of math. They teach. They're learning Matigami, who is how to teach the kids love math, and they starting to a program teach Matigami, who is origami, and how to teach the kids. Oh, this is a circle. It's a square, and it's really important to see how is this connection, because we're talking about going to the lab and going and visit other universities, but the universities, or the beginning of the idea, what is the proposal, the mission of the universities is serving the community. And if we only go to the building and don't go outside to the building and see what happened, what the family live around, we will miss a lot. And the idea is how we partner with groups who really want to know what happened around the building. And with this group, we teach the kids Matigami, we talk about nutrition, we talk about where's the idea to go to school. And besides after 2 weeks of immersion with the community, we also have the experience to know what happened around. And we have the experience with the native community, what is the tradition, what we need to try to keep safe, because we have a big problem in Peru about the corporation coming, destroying villages, and the community need to move to different places. And the kids don't have opportunity to finish primary school, elementary school. And we try to say, no, you need to finish elementary school, go to high school. You have opportunity to do something else. And this experience gives us opportunity to show their students they are privileged. Living in the state is a big privilege that they need to decide or encourage them to finish their career, and also how they can serve in their own community. We hear before that a lot of the smart and students really go abroad, really go to other states and not back to their own community. How we can keep the best students and build their own, build or share their experience with their own community. And we trying to show them what happened in Peru. They give it the courage to back to their own community too. Finally, we believe in education is really need to be equal for everyone. Education for all is the main thing that we believe. If the kids who live in the jungle or live in the mountains have the same opportunity, we can change the life of the community. If we remember 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we was a kid, we can see when we decide starting changing our life, starting when we have a big dream, right? We have 8 years old, 10 years old. They believe in that we can do something better. The family can change. We have a lot of dreams also. And when children do better, we all do better. And I know it's this academic event, but thinking about the future generation. I know for now, for 10 years old or 10 or 20 years in the future, we can see how these kids be a president or be a director of programs, and we can see really what we can do in favor of these kids now. Finally, I want to say the program that we ran the last 2 years with the Latino community in Maryland is it's only one of so many initiatives that we see working with the Latino community. And definitely we see results. They experience improved self-esteem in the kids. They are more enthusiastic talking in Spanish, and they say they are Latinos now. And also they are aware of opportunities available. We give a scholarship for 90% of our participants. They receive scholarship coming to the program. And they think that it's not impossible to go to NIH, go to and see or meet people who have education. But because maybe they don't have any experience to meet someone who works in a lab. Or maybe you are here, but who will know when you go outside if you will meet someone or a kid who in the future will do the same work that you are doing now. It is important to understand that if we want to change what happened in the Latino community or Native American community, we need to start teaching our kids. Thank you. Oh.
I look a lot like this guy Steve who spoke earlier. In fact, I'm representing Homer Neal here. I have many connections with Homer. Homer was the lead professor who got the University of Michigan into the ATLAS experiment at CERN, and he is wearing many different hats. One of his more important hats was that he started really the REU, Summer Student Initiative, which we have at CERN. Homer doesn't stay idly. He took his retirement as a professor at the university in order to be the head of the American Physical Society. And he is not here now because it happens to be that this is April, and that's a very major meeting for the American Physical Society. So he's busy at that meeting. So his talk basically starts with the apology. He's sorry he can't be here. It's a very, very important workshop, and in fact, that's why it trickled all the way down to Steve. He doesn't say that exactly there, but that's what he means, that it trickled way down to Steve here. So I'll get past his apologies here. He had several colleagues, but he was very, very honored to be asked to come to this event, and will certainly help with bringing the input, and he's got a lot of input here, specifically from the organizational point of view. So I'm going to read these to you because I think it's the best thing to do. I've been through these, but rather than interpret, I'd like to make sure that his word is as he wants. Homer's had a lifetime of interest finding ways for American students to spend time at cutting-edge research facilities in international settings, as I mentioned. Part of his interest came from his own experience. He started in '67 a period at CERN where he was a postdoctor fellow. And he realized from that the excitement of research, learning new techniques, the treatment of colleagues as equals, that's a very important part of these programs, and the confidence that I can compete there, I can compete anywhere. For a friend from New York, you understand that. And that built a foundation. So yeah, indeed, the fact that when I didn't mention all of the details of this of our program earlier, it is important to note that when the students do come to CERN, they're registered officially as users, and they have all the same rights as everyone else, and they work on the projects equally to anybody of any age on the experiments and contribute equally. Not just an experience for me. So as the chair of the National Science Board Committee, as I mentioned, Homer wears quite a few hats, or has worn quite a few hats in the past. On undergraduate science education, he noted the value of undergraduate research experiences from the data that they collected in their survey. That study took a year and brought us into contact with leaders in academia, industry, national laboratories, and the military. And based on those experiences, he pushed in 1986 for the committee to recommend new NSF programs. So the research experience for undergraduate students, research experience for teachers, new curricula, and the NSF now has an Office of Undergraduate Education. Okay, that's since the 80s. Paint houses or, and that's an important point. Students, when you're young, you need to maybe gain a little bit of cash or do something interesting during your summers, but there could be perhaps more for these students. So we found that many bright students spent time painting houses during the summer just to have the money to pay the tuition in the fall. And at the same time, the professors were wanting summer help in their labs. So there's always need for help, especially summertime. It's a great time where we run all the time during the summer. The experiments run, and we can use people who are there not just to do analysis, but to take shifts, and there's a lot of work for students. It seemed rational for us to satisfy both of these needs at once, to help the professors carry out their research while helping the students learn what research really was all about. The recommendations were approved by the board, and now tens of thousands of students have been through the RAU program. So this is, I was being specific to CERN. In fact, this is the general RAU program that he's talking about here, tens of thousands of students. So going to labs and working with professors all around the country. So years later, as I carried out my own research at CERN, I wondered why there were no U.S. students in the CERN summer student program, presumed to be the top summer program for students in the world. I was told the U.S. was not a member state, which is still true, and that we surely didn't expect the member states to pay for the summer experiences for wealthy, in quotes, American students. I then turned the question to the Director General and asked if we found the money for our students, could they become a part of the CERN Summer Student Program? And of course, the answer was yes, you can solve things with some money. We hurriedly wrote up an NSF RAU proposal, and it was funded for the last 2 decades. So I joined up with this in about 1998 is when we started running that. And from all indications, the program has been a success. I think he even understates there. Many, many students, pretty much all of them have gone on to graduate studies and very successfully. The important lessons learned from our programs. 1, secure the full backing of the host laboratory. So CERN was wonderful at this. We talked to the directors of international relations, the Directorate General, and they make the students feel at home. They take care of them. The students are integrated into the CERN Summer Student Program. Include a reasonable number of students in cohorts. Students learn a lot from each other. Reduction in homesickness, joint cultural exploration can be optimal in small groups. Most recently, I can say that for our students that come in the fall and the winter, we give them the opportunity to take a trip somewhere. I mean, as long as they're coming over to Europe, there are a lot of places that they can see. One example is to go over to Bern. It's a simple train ride to get to Bern, and you can see the house where Einstein came up with special relativity, and also see some wonderful other cultural activities, art museums, and such. So we support them to do trips like this. They do much on their own. And also the fact that they do this together in a group, which is really important. Okay. Make sure the mentor is committed to the success of the student. CERN mentors must have posted applications stating that they wanted a student, describing what the project was, and committing to care for the student. And we insist on that. And we don't just rest when we know that they've got this mentor and they've got a project, but we follow up to make sure it's working. There have been very, very few times we ever had to do anything but there were times where the project just wasn't appropriate for a student and we had to make changes. There's a culture in Europe that summertime is the time for vacation. So on occasion you might run into a mentor who forgot that they were going to be gone when the student was there. So that gets followed up with. Encourage the student to take time to explore cultural surroundings. Make sure the students know they're supposed to enlarge their cultural awareness as well. In certain, he mentions the Einstein House, or Paris, or Florence. You hardly have to insist on this, because most of the time we embed the students in groups, and the groups are typically multinational, multicultural, and so that this comes naturally. But we do insist that they try to go out and visit things. And this can also depend on the socioeconomic status of the students. Some students come, they fly everywhere. Now you can get on something called EasyJet. You can be anywhere you want for not too much. But some students can't really afford that. And so we still try to help them out and make sure that they get out to different places. And that is what comes to the next point. Pay students at a comfortable level. You don't want students to say, you know, I would do that program, but if I paint houses, I'll get more money and I'll have a more comfortable fall and winter. You really want them to go into these programs and make a difference in their lives. And that's a little challenging in Geneva. Geneva, a comfortable level is pretty expensive. So it's something that has to be taken into consideration. Seek convenient access to institutes, restaurant, pharmacy, food store, all these little logistic issues you have to make sure works out. And that's why I'm there basically, is to guide them to these institutions. I'm gonna skip over this. This is a letter from Kate Kirkby, who's the CEO from the American Physical Society, but I don't think I can get down there to see it. Basically, it's an endorsement letter from the American Physical Society, which I think is rather important. That they feel that the priorities of the APS align well with the workshop's goals. I think that we'll get a good letter of this that we can attach for Randy for the document at the very end. Mentoring is, is an essential component of the goals of the American Physical Society. Oops, oh, there's the other half of it. Well, we'll make sure this is attached. And that's it. So, thank you. I'll convey.
Hi, my name is Dr. Kara Cowan Watts. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. I have served in the past for 12 years on the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council, or 3 terms of 4 years each. And I also just successfully completed my PhD in Biosystems Engineering at Oklahoma State University on a unique aspects of Cherokee Nation's water quality standards. So I have an unusual role in Indian country and for a number of reasons. So I want to give you, I know my tribal colleagues in the room, my introductory part may be a little bit boring, but we always have to do that sort of Indian 101 to kind of give some kind of framework to how you approach our students or our tribal communities. So I intentionally didn't prepare a PowerPoint for today because I wanted to have more of a dialogue. Our students are going to expect that. They're going to engage probably more than likely from a different place. Although they're highly intelligent, they're going to engage with you from a different perspective more than likely, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting through to you the points. And I enjoyed the last PowerPoint, and I apologize to my colleagues that I was here late, but it was torrential rain in Tulsa. And my mother, Beverly Cowan, back there, we had to get past a big truck that they lost almost all the cattle coming out of the stockyards because it was pretty bad. I mean, it overturned, so that stopped us on the highway. So I always look at logistics in terms of how you deliver any program, including the success of our students. It really almost all boils down to logistics. I was one of those students. I was second generation college coming from rural Oklahoma. So I was already a little bit ahead, probably of more than many of my peers, because I was second generation college. My parents fortunately were teachers, including my dad, who had math, chemistry, and physics background at college level at one of our junior colleges. So that gave us a leg up. But that doesn't always happen in Indian country. And I was invested in by not only Oklahoma State University, private corporations, National Science Foundation, plus even people from our national labs that took time to mentor me through American Indian Science and Engineering Society. That's how you get more Dr. Kara Cowan Watts, or my brother, who's Dr. Brett Cowan, who's got his PhD in civil engineering, and he's a professional engineer as well, through National Science Foundation. So that's the investment level. So it's sometimes maybe difficult in some folks' minds because we're less than 1% of the United States population. So when you have to approach Indian country and you're talking about success in Indian country with our students, we're not talking about a large number here. So if your goal is to get hundreds of thousands of students or whatever, that's not going to happen. Because for PhDs, we're less than 1% of a general population, right, that's going to become a PhD. Well, less than 1% of the U.S. population is even a Native American self-claimed on the U.S. Census, let alone actually federally recognized tribal citizens who are part of their community. So your targets need to be realistic in Indian country about how you're going to approach students. And fortunately for Oklahoma State University, they are very good at it. And I think there's some takeaways that you can borrow from the success that they've had in the programs I've encountered or been part of different ways, not only as a student, but maybe in other ways. So tribal sovereignty. In terms of how you create comfort for our students, you have to think that our tribal sovereignty, when I go internationally, almost every country has an indigenous population, at least one, if not more, when you talk to them. If you really dig around, whether they have the legal status that we do in the United States, which is different than the rest of the world. You know that when you go to the UN Indigenous Council, that becomes very apparent, right? So we have legal status. We are federally recognized tribal citizens, and that's very important. I am a member of ACES and not a member of SACNAS. I'm a former 2-time nationally elected ACES board member, and the reason why is not that there are not what I call fakes in ACES, but there's a lot of fakes in SACNAS. The last thing I want to do is be a federally recognized tribal citizen and a female trying to do my job and then compete and find out that the money I needed to complete schooling or another opportunity was taken by somebody that just checked a box and claimed to be Indian. You will lose tribal citizens if you start touting a fake Indian. And I'm saying this because I'm an individual in private practice. I am out in industry now. I own my own company. I apologize if I offend anyone, but it is reality. You will lose people. So there are tribal sovereignty issues unique to the United States that you need to be aware of as you do your programs. There is only, for example, there is only one federally recognized tribal citizen that I consider legit that is a U.S. astronaut. That is John Harrington. Even our own museum in the mall has it wrong about anyone else. John Harrington is the only Indian astronaut that I know of. He is a Chickasaw citizen, period. So if we were to take him, and he's a friend, if I haven't asked him this, but my guess is if the United States started touting somebody else over him or next to him that was not, how would that make him feel? How would that make our tribes feel? So I just want you to take that to consideration as you're developing your programs and putting people out as outreach. So in general, you probably have indigenous populations in your countries that maybe you're already working with. These things that are common that we think are important too are going to be the reason we have sovereignty and will continue to preserve sovereignty is our language is often unique. There's over 580 federally recognized tribes in the United States. Most of them have their own unique language now. Still today, culture and food is unique. We're not homogenous. Although we refer to ourselves as Indian country, we are all absolutely unique and come with our own set of language, culture, food, family structures. In Cherokee Nation, we are a maternal tribe. So the women have unique sets of roles, responsibilities, and powers. I cannot just go to a pueblo in New Mexico as a woman and be the same person if I want to do business that I am as a Cherokee woman at home. You will have some that are very paternalistic, male. They are male-oriented in their center of power and who makes decisions in the community, and that still reflects today in how they also administer their government and when you're interacting with their community. Not just their tribe, which is the former tribal structure, but your community. And then the families, as you're talking to families. Then the ceremony. There's another logistical thing. And a lot of folks want to push out that Cherokee Nation may not have I'm a green-eyed Cherokee. There's a whole bunch of full-bloods left that still speak the language. Unfortunately, I do not speak the language. You may or may not encounter those folks, but we have a schedule for our ceremonies that people that are even close to me, unless they're Cherokee and they go to stomp dance with me, they may not even understand where I go and what that schedule looks like. So ours is throughout the year, but there are some folks like the Pueblos and others that there is a specific time during the year that they are required to be at home, and there is no exception. They cannot leave the kiva or whatever those things are for them. So if you're going to take students overseas for a certain period of time and you're designing your program to be during a certain specific time and for a long time, you need to make sure if you're targeting a certain set of communities that you do not interfere with those, because you will suddenly have no applicants, or you will have people that apply and they are no longer available after they've said yes, possibly, because they're going to have to be home. And this is a very big reality for us. So jurisdiction, why as Indian country do we want to be doing work across borders and with other countries? First of all, I need my students. I spent so long on tribal council, they're still all my students, and I'll explain a little bit why. So we have a jurisdiction and a boundary. Well, if you're from rural Oklahoma and you've never been out of your county or the adjacent counties, barely been to Tulsa or Oklahoma City, Stillwater may even be big for you, then you need to understand how other countries works. Like, it's exciting for me to watch what evolves in the European Union, because that's nationhood. Sovereignty is not a word that you put on a bookshelf and it just sits there. Sovereignty is a verb, is what I tell folks. It's a real action that you're taking. So they need this concept that these borders are there and how other countries, because we're a country, although we're dependent countries or dependent nations within the United States. Because more than likely, if they are anything part of their tribal community, then they will be interacting with their government, and these are important things to them that you'll need to understand if you're going to engage these students and really work with them and get their attention. So we have unique STEM needs. We have, like other indigenous populations, our healthcare needs and health research is extremely challenging because we're such a small part of the community. So we need particular attention. So if they're STEM capable in health research or in those things, we need those. And we need those students to achieve. And sometimes there's nothing like taking a trip to appreciate home, right? That's part of the work. And we need to be sharing across communities. Protection of our natural resources. In the United States, if you look at maps of our natural resources, tribes are the last remaining big assets of coal, gas, all the things that are still driving big money in the United States, and also alternative energies now. So at the end of the day, though, it's really hard when you have less than 1% of the population. How you're challenged because you're not going to have large numbers of success, so to speak. But I would never want to leave. What's great about indigenous populations, historically, we have delivered on some of the most incredible solutions in terms of science, math, architecture, renewable energies. So if we are not at the table and we're not embracing the skill sets of these students, then we're not only leaving behind the world economy, but we may be leaving behind the next solution to global health crisis or global climate change. We want to make sure that everyone is valued. And I think that was spoke to by one of the other panelists earlier. So we need to be embracing this, but you're going to have to be able to talk to the tribal governments and the tribal communities and these families to encourage them to get the logistical challenges that were noted in some of the earlier presentations to be able to actually deliver and be part of these experiences. So one of those ways, for me, I stopped in my work to do my dissertation because it was directly relevant to my tribal community. That will get your students excited. So anytime you have opportunities in terms of research that directly impact their community and you can explain that, you're more likely to engage and get the attention of those students because they will need the support of their family to make it happen. So in terms of preparation, we need to broaden their worldview with travel. So if you can fund them to organizations like the American Indian Science and Engineering Society at an early age. I was more successful as a female engineer early in the corporate world, which propelled me to other things because I'd been on school trips and learned how to negotiate airports. The last thing you want to do is have common logistical things that we assume from the bigger populations happens. Like I had a checking account. I had a credit card. I knew how to negotiate an airport. I've had a rental car access since I was 18 because of an internship I did. You cannot throw young people out that come from these rural communities and populations where they may not know how to balance a checkbook or budget their finances, even if they're given lucrative stipends. You cannot just throw them out necessarily. They're intelligent, they just haven't been shown the things they need to be successful so they can focus on their science and math success. We don't want to take them out for these other reasons, right? I know I was very fortunate because I had people around me that helped me with these things, or I had gotten in these other young programs. We don't want to lose this talent simply because of logistics. So if you can fund early travel experiences, those are important. How you negotiate a hotel safely and be safe, how you get in and out of airports. These are real items that I have seen our students stop short of. And when I was on tribal council, my personal mission is the ACE's mission in life, to increase the number of American Indians, Alaska Natives in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That is my goal. When I have free time, that's what I'm doing. So we created the Cherokee Nation Science and Engineering Fair for the tribe to make sure they had these students from young age, broad age, with people we brought in, had a culturally safe experience to start dabbling in being challenged around science and math. And bringing the CIA and BNSF Railroad and all of us nerdy Cherokees that were around and whoever else we could recruit to start getting them those kind of experiences in a safe place at home, start getting them to travel. And then we funded the top award winners out to the ICEF, the International Science and Engineering Fair, and we've had Cherokees win those contests. ICEF, International, first place, from northeastern Oklahoma. So those experiences, even though they seem minor in our world now where we're at professionally, change lives. If you get the parents to go along on these trips, you suddenly have the folks that their only jobs around them, their highest level jobs are going to be the teachers, the bankers, one or two medical doctors in the community that they might see, maybe a nurse. And you get those same parents that are stuck, because how do you get them out of the cycle, right? You take those parents and you fund them with those children on the trip, and suddenly they're your biggest advocate where you need them most at home to make sure they're going to college and taking benefit of every scholarship. And instead of just going for business or something else, I'm very biased, as you can tell, like anything fluffy, we want them to go into science and math. We need them for so many reasons in Indian country, plus we know we have a shortage everywhere across the United States and the world in most of these truly technical things. So let's see. Their high school will likely lack adequate physics and calculus. A lot of times, we just have a shortage of teachers in Oklahoma. If you read our headlines, and this is true, that doesn't mean they're not intelligent enough to pursue your program, but you might have to back up and teach some fundamentals simply because they've never seen it. And I would throw that out as one. The other thing is, make sure summer camps and internships, those are critical, which is part of what this experience is about. But the sooner we can get to them, the more likely they're going to excel, because we know we lose a lot of those kids in 4th grade for the math and science. So we want to get to them. Anytime you can offer travel or experiences around making science and math exciting, the better off we all are, because we have to have the big pipeline to get to the ones we're wanting, right? We're going to have more. Money is absolutely, and housing are logistical nightmares that can stop our students very quickly. So make sure you did a great job of, referring them. Those are absolute, those were not boring details to me. Those were very exciting, meaning there was a commitment to students who were coming from a population we leave often untouched. So I was excited to see that level of detail and recognize that. So the one thing I'll leave you with is visibility. I referred to it. In our communities, they rarely see, we're lucky if on our tribal councils or sometimes even our chief that they have a high school diploma. That is still a reality in Indian country. I hate that, but it is. So there is a whole bunch of young people, male and female, now going to OSU in engineering simply because I would talk about it and be visible in Cherokee Nation. It is that. I send them to Kay and all of them over here all the time and refer them. So visibility is very key. Like ACES has a quarterly magazine that puts out positive news articles, very visible pictures of people that look like them of all color and shape across Indian country that I try to put in our families' hands all the time to say it's not just about being a banker or the small town doctor or a teacher. There's more to life than those things, and we need you. So don't forget the social media. I like that. Because the tattoo, it is so funny. I was excited about meeting you. I mean, you're like a superhero for me. But it's funny because that tattoo will create more of it. It doesn't make any sense, but that's a visible acknowledgement that they can relate to that will get them, pique their interest. So don't forget that. If you would like, I have through Oklahoma State University, I manage the Oklahoma Professional Chapter of American Indian Science and Engineering Society listserv. You're welcome on that list. You simply will need to email me. I didn't get to check to see if my email's in there. I have a card with me, but you're welcome to be on it. But you're also welcome to not be on it and just simply send me opportunities, which I will push out to Indian country. Yes. So those have been changing, and I make sure, and I have an impact of about 20,000 people in Indian country through Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Google+, and an email list, multiple email list. And I push out those kind of things that create more of us, because without us, where are we going to be? We certainly can't rely on our elected officials to do anything smart. So, yeah. So if we're going to do this together, those are the things that I would leave you with to start engaging our students and family and take them along. And family's key if you can encourage those students to have their parents as part of that. Thank you.
For questions, we have about 20 minutes before we break at 2:50. So our panelists are here to take your questions. Okay.
Question, but I do want to put something out based on something that Kara has said. And Barbara Duggleby is not here, and she represents Napier, Native Americans and Pacific Islanders and Research Experiences. And one of the things that Napier does is that prior to selection of Native American students to spend 10 weeks in Costa Rica, they take the campus mentor down to Costa Rica, stays in the same housing, travels the same way the students would, eats the same food. So I've done this twice. When I come back, and the Native American students who have been selected from Oklahoma to go, those mothers call me. If an old woman like me can survive in Costa Rica, their daughter can, or their son. But they can ask me all kinds of questions. What was it like? How did this happen? And because I am such a free talker, I tell them everything. And so that it eliminates that, the fact they don't want their child to go into a third world country, it's not, but they think that that's the way it is in Costa Rica. And so Kara's right, if they're getting your parents involved, even if it's just a weekend seminar or something to show them what's out there and available and what's gonna happen, does make a big difference in the students going lots of places. Thank you, Kara, for mentioning that.
Thank you.
I'd like to add something to that really quick. So,
Speaking to the mic.
okay, so one of,
It sounds like it's not on, but it's just for the camera.
okay. So one of the things, there was a summer camp here on Oklahoma State's campus where I was a counselor, and this was a month or more, where the students were with us, and they weren't very far from their communities because it was focused on Pawnee and Iowa, those kind of near here around Stillwater. And they had passes that they gave us as the student counselors on campus with the kids all the time for the parents and the other siblings to come eat in the cafeteria when they wanted to come engage with their student and miss them. And we're talking, most people were within 30 minutes of campus, but it really helped open up the eyes and ears and engage the family and make that comfort level where they were invested. And a lot of those students have finished college or are still working on it. They haven't given up even when they've had really extenuating circumstances at home. They're still committed. And part of it is we come from schools a lot of times where there's only 5 to 20 people maybe in a classroom, even with overcrowding due to lack of teachers. So if you come to a big university, I remember my physics class was 200 or 300 people at Oklahoma State. So if they come on campus during a summer experience, that starts getting them comfortable with a whole different world. It's like we're all cities within ourselves on these campuses. So they need to be able to navigate those things, and the family needs to come along with them.
Thank you. Next question.
I'd like to compliment Dr. Watts on the fact that ACES is alive and well. From the SACNAS organization, we appreciate the fact that ACES is alive and well now. I think you mentioned something about fake Indians in SACNAS, which is probably right, but back in, I'm from the 60s. The Corky Gonzalez, Russell Means, Martin Luther King, those were our people then, and those times, there were no fake Indians, there were no fake Chicanos, and no fake African Americans, and that's when we started SACNAS at this time. And two of our first members, founder members, Fred Begay, Native American who was taken away from his family and became a Fred Young. I don't know if you knew Fred or not, but he was a good friend. He became a physicist, a nuclear physicist at Los Alamos. Donna Shapanek, Oklahoma, Delaware, and I think it's a mix of Delaware, but he was a professor at Haskell Indian Junior College at the time. And those are the people that we developed SACNAS from. And at the time we had many discussions. Should Indians be involved? Should Native Americans and African Americans? And from the very beginning we said, well, why exclude anybody? If they want to come in, so now SACNAS is made up of anybody come in. There's professors who are white, students who are white, Indian, even people from other countries sometimes come to the SACNAS meetings, but that doesn't mean that we're going to leave them out. Now, things have changed since we started this organization, so we have no control over it after a while. But I did want to comment that really glad to hear that ACES is so well and alive, because we were, at those years, it was kind of struggling.
Can we just get a spell out for what ACES is?
So ACES is the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, and the website is aises.org, aises.org.
Thank you.
And I think, not to belabor any issue, but I think the recent, or pseudo-recent, the lady who posed as an African American for the NAACP, I think that kind of helps illustrate the question for Indian country. We're fighting to preserve our language and culture, and having other people put forward as us doesn't help us preserve those things, is what I would leave you with. But I also totally appreciate the time in life and in the U.S. History that you're talking about, which hopefully has been resolved with Indian Child Welfare Act and other things to some degree, but those folks do still exist. But most of them should have ties to their tribal community, and they're legitimate. You would understand if you work with, in partnership with tribes, where they're coming from.
Let's hope Mr. Trump doesn't take over.
That's a discussion for a special breakout session later involving several glasses of whiskey. Any other questions for the panel? Yes, sir.
This question is for Steve. I was wondering, my school, typically for the past maybe 3 or 4 years, Dr. Jones may correct me, we've sent about 3 to 4 students to CERN. And listening to your conversation or your presentation, it is obvious that there are other funding opportunities that you give out, which I don't think we really know of, because we generate our funds. Sometimes funding is coming from our grant, sometimes from the university. So if you could share some information about those funding opportunities that would allow students to be able to get those experiences with you as
Okay, well, the funding opportunities that we have, at least that I've presented, there's the research experience for undergraduate students is funded by the National Science Foundation. So this is for summer student program. Right now, there's nothing specific for any particular type of student, one way or another, just the best students. So we have about, this past year, about 250 applicants or so. We accepted 17. We saved up a little bit of money. Normally it's about 15, but we saved up some, so we have 17 students that we choose from there. If we know that there are students applying to that program from special backgrounds, it might help us to pick them out from the back, from the long list that we have. But we truly have to select the best students that we possibly can. That's very important to the program, and there's really hard competition. That's what happens during the summer. The fall and the winter, we have funding from the Lounsbury Foundation. They funded us for 3 years to get started this semester abroad program, and we typically accept 5 students in the fall from September to December, another 5 students starting in January into April or May. We're a little bit more flexible there, go a little bit further if it's needed. And there's a little bit less competition there because it's a brand new program, so not everybody knows about it, and that's one of my goals, was to make sure that people knew about that. And that's another good program to apply to. Now, these are for undergraduate students. And there are other opportunities that are through universities. Typically things are done through universities. And the best is to contact research teams as well, research teams that are involved in experiments. The last program I would mention is the high school teacher program. I think I mentioned that before. And that's during the summer, we take 5 high school teachers for about 3 weeks. They come and they're embedded with the other high school teachers from all around the world. And they go through a program which really is designed to let them share their practices with other teachers, to learn from other teachers, and also find out how they can interest their students by doing a variety of different things, master classes and other activities in the classroom and all of that. And I think that's a nice program for here. And I think any one of these programs, if there was someone who had the initiative and wanted to, supplements are always possible. So that's something to think about too, is if we wanted to say, hey, we would like to try to get some grant to add on to this a few students from LSAM, for example. I don't think it'd be that hard to convince the NSF or another body to get some additional funding. 1 or 2 students, but it has to be justified and written up.
Okay. Then one aspect mentioned during your presentation was that of you Skyping with students in high school, and is there any formal way to do that, or if I were interested in you having a Skype with my kid's school or any other school in the area, is there a formal way of approaching you for that, or approaching CERN for that, or I come through you?
Well, you just did. So you give me your coordinates afterwards. That's pretty much open. We just sort of invented that system. We call them virtual visits. And what we do is we use a video conference software. It's a little bit more reliable than Skype and just as easy to load. We add on to that the possibility of a webcast that goes on at the same time so that if parents are interested. So it's typically between us and a classroom so the students can ask questions. But then a webcast at the same time, parents can look in, see what's going on. Anybody can look in if they want. And then we record it too, so they have that they can share afterwards with family and friends. And I'm sort of investigating with some students how to build upon that, some little bit more thing for them to do. I don't know if you're familiar with the TED Ed animations, for example. They're very popular these days, where teachers add a little something to it. They watch the animation and they add something to it. We're looking into trying to do something that can be carried on even more and maybe connect the classrooms with each other. But for now, contact me. We have developed this through the different experiments. Atlas has this. I represent Atlas. CMS, our competition across the ring, also does this, and I can always lead you to them as well. And on our website, you can click.
Thank you.
Sir?
Hi, this question is for Dr. Ted. Thank you for your presentation. I was really starting that, as well as the other presentations. My question is, for those of us who are not in the field, what are the implications of the detection of gravitational waves? And in your experience, in your personal experience, are you a product of this program, student exchange, when you were developing as a scientist, and whether any of the students that you're hosting during this international conference had any participation in the discovery?
Okay, there's a lot of questions there. Well, first off, I'm not a doctor. I just had a bachelor's of science degrees in physics and applied math. I'm losing track. Okay.
What is the significance?
That was a tough thing. Like, as soon as I sat down, there was like, oh gosh, there were so many things I could have said more. Because usually when we've been giving these talks, I usually go for at least 45 minutes and talk people's ears off. But as far as implications, the main thing is that we're opening a totally new way of looking at astronomy. So everything else in astronomy is electromagnetic radiation, so light, gamma rays, radio waves, all of that stuff is all at the atomic level. So gravitational wave astronomy is a completely new field where the effects, the signals are coming from the actual big violent events in space. So it's going to be a totally new field of astronomy, and that's what we're excited about. And then as far as my background, I grew up in Southern California. I didn't grow up on the res. That's my mom escaped the res. That's how she wanted to get her kids out there. So she left the res, and I grew up in Southern California. And my role model, my mentor was my dad. He was an engineer, although he never had a degree. He did pretty much electrical engineering, and he was my hero, as well as I'm dating myself, but the TV show MacGyver. I wanted to be the first native MacGyver back in the day. But and then as far as the international students, I'm not aware of what kind of connections they have to the actual event. I mean, so I'm sure there's a lot of. I worked with a lot of the local students who were at our observatory in Washington, and some of them did do work that was directly related to running our machine. So they're definitely connected to it. They knew about the event, so that they were made aware of it because they were a part of the collaboration. They had to keep their mouth shut about it for 5 months. But we were, as soon as it was announced on Facebook, everything blew up, and so it was good to talk to the students about that as well.
Or would you host international students? I think that's the other.
For
right,
the,
is that what you were?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the SURF program, which is similar to our EU, there were participants from around the world. So I think last summer we had some from India, a few countries in South America that were out at the sites. And I was a chaperone for like a weekend where we took the students from Washington, from Pasadena, and we all went out to the Louisiana site. And so we got to go to New Orleans, we got to go on a swamp tour, and just show them get them out there to an observatory. And so, what else can I say? I think that's all I have to say about that for last year. Yeah.
Great.
So quick follow on that, Corey. Does it mean that you don't know when you expect to anticipate these waves coming in? Because this one sounded like it took well over 10 years for you to get some belief of some kind, which is a big story as you are saying. So you don't anticipate or know when you're going to record any of those things?
Yeah, I could try to go as fast as I can to explain how it works. So our machines are pretty complex, and to get them up and running to collect data takes time because there's other things that we're fighting all the time. So basically we want to collect data and just be running both machines at the same time so that we're up and running when an event's going to happen, because we don't know when these events are going to happen. We just have to be up and ready to detect them when they do. So William Parker and myself are operators, so we actually sit in the chairs, we work on shifts, and we're sitting there getting our machines up and online to record data. So we want to have boring shifts, so we want to have a shift where the machine is running, it's purring and collecting data, but there's going to be things that take it down all the time. There's going to be earthquakes that shake our mirrors around, there's going to be computers that crash on us, there's going to be gravel trucks that are driving by on the road 10 miles away. Storms out at sea that are, on the other side of the planet, they could shake our mirrors as well, really low frequency stuff. So those are all the seismic things that we have to fight all the time. And so we just have to make sure our machines are up and ready to collect those events. And so the idea of it comes from Einstein 100 years ago. And we started making LIGO back in the 70s. So from the 70s to now is when LIGO's kind of been where it's at right now. And we turned it on for the first time for advanced LIGO back in September. So we made the detection almost right after we turned it on. Yeah.
Another follow-up, just to put it into context. I will bet anyone that a Nobel Prize will be awarded as a direct result of this within the next couple of years. So that puts into context how significant this is. Yeah, it's on the same level as the Higgs boson and arguably bigger than the Higgs boson because it's like a totally new. And I'm a particle physicist. You could argue it's bigger than the Higgs boson. So it's yeah.
I don't know if I'll get to attend the ceremony. I mean, when and if it happens, but I'll probably take a trip to Switzerland and I'll be partying in the streets when it happens.
Just be peering into the window.
Yeah.
Just want to mention a couple of questions. There are quite a few PhDs around in this. And how many of you have read Ulysses? Because there's a lot of mention of mentors. And I was asked to give a commencement speech years ago at a university on mentors. So I had to go back and read about mentor and Ulysses and what a mentor was. But then the other thing was, when I went to a PhD at Berkeley, they didn't call them mentors, they called major professors. And my major professor said, you're going to get a PhD. He says, what do you know about a PhD? I said, well, it's Doctor of Philosophy. He says, good. I want you to read Plato and Aristotle. Be ready for an exam on Plato and Aristotle because it was a Doctor of Philosophy. So we had to do that. And I tie those two, mentors and philosophy together, and I wonder if that's still the case in doctoral programs. You said you had read this, right?
I read it on my own time. It was not required as part of my nor was knowing philosophy, but I did that on my own time as well.
Okay.
It's a good idea.
Anyway, it's good to know where the term came from, and it's really a real close friend like family. And I think many people have said, if you're going to be a mentor, you have to treat that student like it's one of your family. It's yours. and it's a lifetime commitment. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Well, let's thank our panel. Thank you so much. Time is now 2:39, and you have 11 blissful minutes before the break. Enjoy.